Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Prowler Podcast. I am joined by my friend, my rival, my raisin entree. Is that what it's called? Get Gus Logue. I don't know. Gus, how the heck are you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited to be talking with you again, Ship, and recap some joint practice, which is always the most exciting time of the year. I was kind of like joking with Justin. We had a bit going of like, yay, we're so excited, and like mimicking the excitement, honestly. But then by the end of the practice, we were like, all right, that was pretty cool. It was worth the hype.
It was legitimately fun. Like,
yeah,
I thought the crowd made it a really good atmosphere. I thought obviously the competition. I mean, I can imagine for us, I thought it was a legitimately like really entertaining practice to watch. Like I can imagine if you're competing in it, that dang, I thought the intensity was raised. Like if you're actually the ones doing it, and Jaguars kind of did it from the start. I mean, Jalen Husky like started shoving somebody like when they were doing special team drills,
right?
Started practice, so it was clear where it was going to go. And as Liam Cohen said after practice, basically, he doesn't want them to fight, but he doesn't want them to get punked. Doesn't want them to quote unquote take shit. The only reason I found that interesting, Gus, is just because obviously like it just felt like that identity of the team, and with the Trevor incident in 2024, that was kind of the opposite of what that team's kind of culture kind of was. And it just looked like, I mean, Tim Jones got hit like pretty hard over the middle on one play, and Austin Trammell, of all people, came up and started, scrapping Ezra Cleveland through himself like a little pinball a couple times, just rolling himself at people like honestly like a turtle shell in Mario Kart. He was just flying in there, dude. But it was an entertaining practice, and I'll say this: I felt like the Jaguars needed it, Gus, because for like all intents and purposes, like I've said to you before, I don't believe like a singular training camp practice matters in the long run to team success, all that kind of stuff. It had been a rough week for the Jaguars. They were getting hurt more and more every day. Practices were hard to get from start to finish. You heard him going literally in one practice say he cut the practice early, basically because the defense was smashing them in the face, and that was because of the injuries along the offensive line. More guys have gotten injured there. More guys have gotten injured at linebacker. I mean, Mondays and Tuesdays practices were pretty, I think, uninspiring. All in all, I mean, Liam didn't seem happy at all after the first practice earlier in the week. I believe it was on Monday. He seemed rather disgusted with what he'd seen, to the point where he said he was considering starters playing in the preseason, which he had been saying since March. That was the whole point of joint practices, I thought. And I think that was literally Liam just saying, like, I'm disgusted with what I'm seeing in front of me. And I think that's not to say because the Jaguars are bad or anything like that. They're getting hit by the injury bug in camp. It is what it is. Your first team offensive line looks like your second team. Your second team offensive line looks like your third team. Gus, at joint practice yesterday, I did the math. 40% of their two deep offensive line were third stringers, either to start camp or weren't on the roster to start camp. So, I mean, they were, and that you say, okay, that's second team offensive line. You basically have nobody you can, throw in there at all. So I think the Jaguars need it, because I think the last week had been, kind of terrible for them in terms of injury and momentum. And I think Liam kind of seemingly visibly disgusted with it, kind of confirmed that. And then they came out yesterday, Gus, and I thought like right from the start of practice, they looked good. And I don't think anybody wins joint practices. I think that's one of the most ludicrous take people have, but I thought it was a good day for the Jaguars. What were your thoughts?
Definitely thought it was a good day. I kind of agree with your sentiment where it felt like they were looking for a win, where that's like why they were struggling a little bit in practices, obviously with like the offensive line being dinged up. That's why they were thinking about playing starters on Friday. It was like they have so much continuity in the coaching staff and then players that you'd think that like they wouldn't need those reps, but because like the O-line is shuffling so much, and again they've been like up and down a little bit, like they were looking for a win. They wanted to get a little bit of juice, and so I feel like they were able to check that box a little bit yesterday. They brought the juice. First of all, it felt like, I mean, neither of us were in New Orleans for the first joint practice or the preseason game, but it sounded like they like, not that they were like lackadaisical, but they didn't really bring the juice as well as they did yesterday. And so I think to see what he saw yesterday, Liam definitely seemed happy. And I mean, from kind of standing up for one another, not taking any shit, to like dominating in red zone periods, just like throughout practice. Like Josh Hines down, Dennis Gardeck had consecutive sacks to kind of like end the practice in 2-minute situation. It definitely felt like there was a winner, even if, as you kind of made an asterisk of, like there are no winners in just a single day of practice. But the Jaguars, I think, probably left feeling like winners in a very small regard.
It's really, you know, like you said, in terms of perspective, like there's a Panthers guy in the crowd, and he was like tweeting, like filming some of the plays and tweeting them, and it's like you go by his TL, and I mean, Panthers were cooking, and Panthers offense, you know, both I watched mostly offense, Jaguars offense for today, but Panthers offense, it seemed like had picked it up the second half of practice. I thought that Liam was very illuminating after practice. First of all, Liam randomly saying Monday that I think the starters might play killed me to begin with. It was completely out of nowhere. Had never once insinuated before that he was even going to think about it. And then, you know, like you said, we weren't there in New Orleans. By all accounts, you know, like you said, it's a matter of perspective. If you read New Orleans, you know, accounts of that practice, New Orleans is going to go 16-1, and Tyler Shuck is going to be voted, you know, the best dog and show, and whatever you want to call it. If you go by, you know, what Liam Cohen said directly after that practice, he was like, yeah, good day at work. You listened to Liam yesterday, and it feels like 2 or 3 times without anybody asking. He goes, yeah, way better than last week. He's like, yeah, like last week in which we sucked. It seemed like the sentiment he was trying to convey, right?
Pretty much.
It felt like he finally wanted to have a good practice to be like, okay, yeah, that was absolutely terrible. We've been terrible. Liam, that's what I like about covering Liam. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and it is very clear that he at least thought, like, you can gauge how good a Jaguars practice went normally by his temperament, you know, when he speaks after it. You know, he's always obviously balanced and, you know, cool, calm, and collected, but some days he's in a better mood than others. You can kind of just tell. And it seemed like he thought that they had, you know, a relatively productive day. And I thought so too, guys. I thought, you know, let's just hit a couple things. I said this, Gus. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm overreacting. I thought not only was that the best practice I've ever seen Bashal Tuden have as a Jaguar, and that's in the context of training camp practices. I don't see him practicing in the regular season, and the Jaguars could have a very different interpretation. But my very novice thoughts, not knowing, Bashal Tuden went Zoom yesterday. I thought it was his best practice as a Jaguar ever. I thought he had his best run that I've seen him have, like, individually traits-wise. You know which one I'm talking about. You tweeted about it.
That's what I was about to say.
Am I wrong? Am I exaggerating that?
I think what I tweeted is, like, it was the best run that I've seen in a practice setting. But I agree with you. Like, overall, it was probably just the best practice that I've seen from him. Again, I don't go to, like, the regular season practices. Like, OTAs basically doesn't count because they don't have pads on. Cohen also added the caveat that, like, it's really hard to evaluate the second and third level because, like, guys weren't like wrapping up and finishing tackles. So it's like, did he really break that tackle? Was that a 40-yard run or was it a 14-yard run? And so that's, like, actually is something that Tuden kind of has to prove. Like, he was really good in short yardage situations last year when the Jaguars needed him to be, especially at the goal line. But in terms of, like, making people miss in space and being like great at yards after contact, like, his best play was against the Bengals on that, like, little dump off he had in the red zone and just made a linebacker to look silly. But he, like, it was like the wrong play for him. And so, like, you can't really hang your hat on that a lot. And so you'd like to see him. He's supposed to be like this super dangerous guy in open space. And I think it'd still be nice to see that a little bit more at the NFL level. But what we saw from him at the first level yesterday was definitely very encouraging. Liam's talked a lot about how he's, like, want to get him on the right track in terms of, like, rushing lanes and vision and stuff like that. And it felt like yesterday he was, like, in the second and third levels, like, super quickly. And then he was, like, making jump cuts and really nice moves that had the crowd oohing and awing. And so he just, like, looked very decisive, obviously very fast, and just generally impressive.
That's the word I think it is. Like, to me, I think that what Liam's message on Tuden since the season has ended had basically been like, okay, like, obviously he thinks he does some things really well. You know, he has speed. He was impressed in short yardage last year, but it's very clear that Liam wants more creativity, I think, as a runner, more playmaking from Tuden as a runner. Because, like you said, Tuden, you know, he basically could get what was there. He could run through some guys. He could force, some missed tackles like at the start of a play, but wasn't really hitting those kind of moves at the second level or third level that was helping him hit the home runs. And, and it felt like he was hitting home runs yesterday. Jump cuts, whatever. You saw the creativity as a runner that I think, I don't want to say, Tuden's almost, I'd say last year as a rookie. I'm not saying this is him, but last year as a rookie, how he ran and how Cohen's talked about him, almost robotic, right? Like as a runner, like almost formulaic, like
right.
Okay, he's going to go. He's going to, get a couple yards at the contact. But it seems like Liam is like, okay, make a guy miss, make a big play, take advantage of open space. And that's why yesterday was so notable to me, Gus. You like you said, how many of those plays would have been actual tackles? I'm not sure, but I saw enough from him just in terms of creativeness that, like, as a pure natural runner, that I just haven't seen from him very often. Like, I don't think that we've seen in games or like normally in games with big plays, he's bowling people over. That's his thing. We saw a little something different from him yesterday. And I think an important context is, I know people have probably been wondering, okay, that was pretty easily his best practice of the summer. People have probably been waiting for him to have a really big day, probably since pads have come on. But I think Trevor Lawrence gave good context after practice when he was like, yeah, the running game was really good today. Normally we go against our own run defense, and he says like banging their head into a brick wall. The Jaguars' run defense is really good. Nobody's hitting home runs against the Jaguars starting run defense in practice. It's not like a Tuden-specific issue. I think you and I have both been impressed by Chris Rodriguez Jr. I'm impressed by Chris Rodriguez Jr. getting like 6 yards or
right. Yeah.
I'm not like Chris Rodriguez Jr. isn't down the middle of the Jaguars, spying the defense for 40 yards over and over. Nobody's hitting the home runs. And I think that honestly is a factor with Tuden during training camp. It's just the Jaguars can't really run the ball against their defense. With their offensive line yesterday, they ran the ball. And I think that's the next, spot we can talk about, Gus. Have they kind of found, like, accidentally, completely not on purpose, completely by happenstance, and honestly completely by necessity, have they kind of found the lineup that kind of works?
They might have stumbled into it a little bit because
let's talk about Pregnon. Let's starting with the Saints, what Liam said after him. Let's get into Pregnon talk.
Yeah, there's been a lot of hype around him. I kind of probably helped bolster it by just like posting all of his all 22 clips from the Saints game. And like basically, I think the takeaway that Cohen had, the takeaway that like Baldy had when he broke it down the tape on his X account, the takeaway that a lot of people have is that like there's a big old asterisk because it's the preseason. He's in like not necessarily playing against like the most creative schemes. He's not necessarily playing in the most creative scheme. He's not necessarily competing against like the best NFL athletes. And so like there's a lot of asterisks with the situation. But saying all that, he looked pretty darn good. Like I feel like there wasn't any glaring mistakes. There wasn't anything glaring of like, oh, like he could finish a little bit better on some reps and just in terms of like keeping his contact balance. But there's other reps where he like finishes guys by pancaking them and just like flattening them into the core of earth. And so there was a lot of things to be encouraged by. And then the hype just continued this week. I feel like we're in practice. He was first string left guard, and Ezra Cleveland was starting to play more on the right side. I feel like he was playing more tackle a little bit at the beginning of training camp, and now it's been a little bit more of guard. But since Ezra looked really good in his first NFL action, even if it was preseason, and now he's getting first team reps, it's like, all right, they might have the guy. But I think, John, you and I are a little bit like, whoa, because Cohen himself said, whoa. You did a good job of like good reporting by you, John, of like following up about Pregnon earlier this week and being like, now that you've had a chance to watch the film, what do you think? And that's like what Cohen said. He was like, he looks really encouraging, but I want to like slow down the hype a little bit is kind of our takeaway. And so I think that he is getting a lot of first team reps at left guard, but the O-line is also very banged up. And so I don't know if that would necessarily be the case if they had everyone healthy.
And like, I feel like just, unpacking it from there. Okay, let's start with he's getting first teams, at guard and whatnot. If he wasn't, the only other guy who would be is Jonah Monaghan right now. Like that like added, we'll talk about the guard they just added, but otherwise, like out of their, they entered training camp with what, 10 offensive linemen who you can make an argument for the 53-man roster. 6 of them are healthy right now. Cole Van Lannon isn't, Patrick McCary isn't, Chuma Edoga isn't, Wyatt Milam isn't. At different points, Walker Little, hasn't been. I think that if like looking at the fact that he's been starting there since Monday alone, using that as like an evidence point of okay, Pregnon is about to be anointed a starter. I don't think it's necessarily fair. Like he's there because it's basically, what do they like better? Him and Ezra out there or Ezra and Monheim? It's pretty understandable to see why they would prefer Pregnon. Monheim, has taken reps at both left and right guards. Actually, I think had a really good training camp, but Pregnon on Saturday looked really encouraging. I think he gave up the one pressure, and it was like on a stunt that I think he was late to, and otherwise, he was really impressive. The thing I like about Pregnon is just the fact that not many Jaguars offensive linemen have had his combination of size and strength and explosiveness. He can just completely cave in guys. They just haven't really contra. I mean, they've been drafting like Ben Barch and Javon Foster and so on and so forth. Like they haven't really drafted like people movers like Pregnon.
Yeah, Luke
and
Fortner.
all that showed. To Pregnon's credit, he's looking a bit more ready than I anticipated. I'm not even talking about like Saturday. I think he's been more impressive since Saturday. Like on Monday, when he got the reps with Ezra at right guard, like you mentioned, Ezra's been at different spots. There was, before Milam got hurt, there was a combination like last week, boy. It was like Anton, Monheim, Hainsey, Milam, Ezra. They've thrown out like combinations that I wouldn't even have thought of in my sickest dreams, like before training camp started, because they've had to. And this is kind of the latest iteration of one, but it's worked. And in Monday's practice, they go first team against first team. I'm seeing Pregnon block Devon Hamilton and move him a couple yards and like reset the line of scrimmage. He's looked really good in practice. I thought he looked good yesterday. Hey, I don't know what the hell's gotten into Ezra Cleveland. Yeah, Gus, you were right. I'll get you. Maybe you were right a couple years early, but you were right. Ezra Cleveland looked like the best player on the field sometimes yesterday.
Now he's got that dog in him. Cohen put it in him.
Yes.
He had like a pretty good quote about it yesterday, I think. But like, when I first liked Ezra, like I thought he was basically like an NPC when the Jaguars traded for him from the Vikings. And then I watched this film and I was like, okay, this is better than I expected. He's like not necessarily going to be like a household name and like be on like making highlights for offensive linemen, but he does his job pretty well. And now maybe he'll start making some highlights now if he's got the dog in him and he's like really straining till the end of the whistle, finishing plays. It has come in flashes. Like there's some highlights of Jaguars plays where like Ezra is like the first offensive lineman, like hustling down the field to continue blocking for an explosive. So it's not like he's just like completely aloof in the past, but it does seem like Cohen is kind of like got something a little bit more out of him. And he's not the first player. Like I think that a lot of people could say that like Trevor Lawrence like has a little bit more dog in him since Cohen got here, has just like a little bit more juice as a competitor. Anton Harrison too is like someone that the Cohen specifically and the whole Jaguars coaching staff was like just looking for more consistency and like trying to truly become an elite player because he has that capability. And so Ezra just feels like kind of like the latest example of like the Cohen and his culture carrying over and getting like the most out of a player because he's looked pretty good.
He has, and I gave you crap years ago for calling him the X Factor. He had a really good year last year. When we talked about it a year ago, I'm sure we were talking at this point. I was probably saying, "Hey, Ezra might get cut." They drafted, Wyatt Milam. I feel pretty stupid. Right now, Ezra looked good last year. He's looked good in training camp this year. All right, guys. So there's 2 paths we can take with that in mind. There's a couple more layers we can peel back with the offensive line. We can talk joint practices and get back to it. I'm thinking just offensive line. If you had to guess right now, because there's a lot of movement with the guards, what do you think is the week 1 starting offensive line? I'll give you mine. I think it is Anton Harrison. I think it is Emmanuel Pregnon. I think it is Robert Hainsey, Ezra Cleveland, and Cole Van Lannon. I think that your backups are Walker Little, Chuma Edoga, who I would expect to be healthy by then, Wyatt Milam, Jonah Monheim, and new offensive lineman Daniel Faalele, who, we will talk about. What do you think the week 1 starting offensive line is? That is my true guess. I think Cole gets back by then. What do you think?
For the sake of being different, I'll say Anton, Ezra, left guard, Hainsey, and then like Walker Little, Cole Van Lanen. But you had Cole Van Lanen not in the starting lineup. You're not.
No, I had him at right tackle.
Oh, right tackle. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have Little at right guard and Ezra at left guard. So I think we agree that Van Lanen will start if he's available. Ezra will start. It's just a matter of which position. We feel pretty comfortable about like Hainsey at center, obviously, but then also Anton sticking at left tackle. Like, to me, I think that it's trending in the direction that Pregnon is starting. I just think that like the Jaguars' plan, I think, was like, we like Pregnon. We're happy that we drafted him, but he's going to be like a little bit of a project. And like, we're hoping that we're going to be comfortable starting him like as he enters year 2. And now all of a sudden, like he looks a lot better than they probably expected. And now they're dealing with all these injuries enough to the point where they just traded a draft pick to get someone from the Giants who we're about to talk about. So like, I'm going to stick with like my prior from like a day or 3 ago, but I think it's trending in the direction of your prediction.
Yeah. And I'm surprised like for that to be my prediction, guys, because
when
Liam talked on Monday about Pregnon, I had the same interpretation you did, that he was saying, hey, Pregnon looked good, but let's back it up.
Let's cool the jets.
Let's slow down a little bit. And then I think he has just been impressive since. Obviously, now Milam's injured. I mean, we'll talk about Macari now. Macari reportedly, according to Ian Rappaport, Mike Garofalo.
Mike G.
Garofalo. There we go. Recently underwent a back procedure. And the messaging has been that no determination has been made on him on IR. I don't even know where to go with that one, Gus, because first, to my complete recollection, sustained a back injury on like the 3rd or 4th day of training camp last year. Like that was when he had first went down in practice and they're like, oh, it's a back. He dealt with it for a couple of weeks to the point where, if you remember, Chuma Edoga got most of the training camp reps at first team right guard as a result. Then he deals with a back injury last year. He gets hurt against Denver. Doesn't do anything, in the offseason, doesn't do anything to start training camp. Liam Cohen says they're taking it slow with him. And then this comes out. We still see him out there, but like when they say that, no determination on IR has been made yet, like to me, like there's only 2 choices. And I don't know, like you don't have to make them right now, but one, you either put him on IR right now. If you don't put him on IR right now, you have to, go into the season and figure out, okay, hopefully he plays at some point. I would imagine the way it's trending right now, and we'll talk about Faalele in a second, but they just traded a 6 for a guy. I don't imagine you're doing that if you think Macari is going to play anytime soon, because then you have 11 rosterable offensive linemen. Carrying 10 was already kind of, that's already kind of overzealous. That would probably mean Chuma Edoga getting cut. I don't know if they're trading a 6 just to cut Chuma Edoga a couple of weeks later. Like that just doesn't track to me. So, if they think Macari is going to play at all, they have to wait until the 53-man roster and designate him to return and all that. Because the IR to now, Gus, he'd be out for the year. But even the reporting on it from the NFL Network guys was the Jaguars expect him to play in 2026. What do you mean you expect him to play? Like, yeah. When did you start talking about not expecting him to play in 2026? That was my reaction to it, Gus. I'm not double counting the injury because I already wasn't expecting Macari to start in week 1. I thought they were the original plan was roll with Milam. I think you and I were both pretty unimpressed by Milam to start camp, and now he's injured as well. Day to day, they said that, should be back. I would think by week 1 at least, but even if he's back, I don't think he's shown enough to really be given a starting job. Maybe they have a different evaluation. I'm not sure, but then you're getting into, okay, if Milam isn't starting and Macari's hurt, who starts at right guard? Is it Walker Little? Is it Chuma Edoga. Oh wait, Chuma Edoga dies, versus the Saints. He'll also obviously be back shortly, but so on and so forth. Oh, and then Walker Little was also hurt at one point, to the point where you just end up with Emmanuel Pregnon and Ezra Cleveland, and then hey, it kind of works. I don't think they make this trade for Faalele, Gus, if Makari's. I just don't see how the math would make sense. I don't see how the risk for like a 6 for him isn't nothing. I'm sorry. It's like the Tim Patrick trade. They weren't trading for Tim Patrick to be a starter, but you're trading for a spot on the 53-man roster. He has made the team. He is locked in. Does the math to you indicate at all that Makari is going to play anytime soon? To me, it doesn't.
No, I'm on the same track as you. I think if like they had even hope that Makari would be like available for week 1, instead of trading a draft pick, they would sign whoever their favorite offensive lineman is that's available, or even like wait a little bit until roster cuts. There's going to be like some decent players available on waivers. And so you could like hypothetically just play it that way and be like, well, hopefully Makari will come back, but there's also probably going to be some options that pop up. And so between those two possibilities, we feel okay. But it sounds like the possibility of Makari playing week 1 is pretty low. And so they felt like they need some insurance, not just to like be a body in training camp, but to be on the 53-man roster, as you're saying.
I think even beyond week 1, Gus, I think like you're trading a 6th-round pick. Like if you're expecting him out for 3 weeks, do you trade a 6th-round pick to have better depth for 3 weeks?
No, I don't think so.
I think that's like a pretty tangible. And if you're saying, you haven't made a decision on IR, wouldn't you have already made the decision not to IR him right now? Because that would mean he's out for okay, here's my question then. Does Patrick Makari play a game this year? I'm going to go ahead. I don't think he does. I don't think so. I think this trade has told us that he probably does not. And this sounds crass, but in the grand scheme of things, we're going to pick a starter from last year who would have to, be without for the year. It would probably be him, right?
Yeah, especially like backs are never a good injury. Like I feel like PCLs, MCLs, ACLs, like all of those are obviously not good too, but like backs are really tough to come back from. And so the fact that he already had it lingering, I mean, I guess hypothetically the surgery could clean it up and make it better, but I don't necessarily have high expectations. If I had to say one, I'd say, yeah, he won't play again. But like I don't know why there hasn't been like a IR decision yet. Like it feels like they want to just like keep him in their back pocket so that if like injuries pop up mid-season, they can be like, "Oh, Makari, you feel like coming off IR yet?" Like,
which would make sense. There's no harm to their roster if he's IR designated. Like Jalen McLeod was IR designated to return for like 16 weeks last year. So like it's no skin off their bones. I agree with you.
I will say that like if there is one position to overinvest in, it's offensive line. Like I feel like most Jags fans are probably familiar with like Cohen's quotes about like the 2022 Rams and how they just got like decimated by offensive line injuries, and he and Gladstone like never want that to happen here. But like even looking around the league last year, like the Chargers are probably like the chief example of a team that just like had absolutely no chance because of injuries to their offensive line. I feel like the Texans got really banged up too, even if their guys weren't necessarily super talented to begin with. But it happens across the league every year where like maybe it's not necessarily like Super Bowl contenders, but there are a few teams that like miss the playoffs and just don't even have a chance because injuries happen. And so like for Jacksonville to just be trying to do everything they can not to make that happen, even if it does mean like hypothetically wasting a 6th-round pick on the Giants guy. Like if you're going to waste a pick, quote unquote, to like over invest in one position in terms of having like too many on the roster and having to make a roster cut, all that stuff, I feel like it would be offensive lineman. But I'm really just playing devil's advocate.
No, I agree. Here's my question. Is the value of a 6th-round pick worth the difference between starting Daniel Faalele, if necessary, against any of the following players? Ricky Lee, Jerron Christian, Sam Mustipher, Jerome Carvin, Killian Zaire, Jimto Obegderu. Like, yeah, Faalele is not good, but there's a pretty significant gap between him and those guys, right? And
exactly.
I think that's what the Jaguars' logic is, that if they have to give up a 6th-round pick to potentially not start one of those guys, and they have no leverage either. Like, I'm sure they could have set a 7 to the Giants, and the Giants say, hey, you are completely desperate to even pick up the phone and call about a guy that we just signed to a 1-year deal who may or may not have even made the roster. So, I mean,
it didn't sound like it was trending that way, honestly. There was a report from The Athletic like about the trade, and it sounded like Faalele was actually like kind of expected to be the starter, but then the Giants got the 10th overall pick from the Dexter Lawrence trade, and they spent that on Francis Muaga or whoever you say his name. And so now they have 2 plugged-in guards between their 10th overall draft pick and John Runyon. And then so basically like entering training camp, Faalele was practicing with the second team, but apparently there's been like some reshuffling where like a swing tackle got pushed down. So then the backup to the swing tackle got pushed to like Faalele's position at left guard. And so it seemed like he was going to be cut and potentially even like be one of those guys that would be on the waiver wire as 53-man rosters are getting finalized. But the Jaguars essentially like jumped the ship and were like, all right, before that's even like a chance, even if he is going down on the New York Giants depth chart, like we need to solidify our offensive line a little bit.
So in a way, the question to ask is a 6th-round pick worth being at the top of the waiver wire? Like, right? And like a very like black and white, like scaled down thing. And I can make the argument almost. They clearly, the Giants clearly like got a caper on them for the quality of player they got a 6th-round pick for, but I at least understand the logic, right?
Yeah, it's very understandable.
Yeah. Okay. So and like if he starts, it's because several guys get hurt. Okay, so here was their second team offensive line just based on availability for Saturday's practice, guys. Considering all the people who were injured, we're not counting Faalele because he got traded like he got reported like 20 minutes before practice or somehow. So here's what their second team offensive line would have looked like. That again, Ricky Lee, Jerron Christian, Sam Mustapher, Jonah Monheim, and Killian Zaire. Here's what their offensive line, their second team offensive line, could now look like if we go with, the Pregnon Cleveland tandem and Van Lanen's back. Walker Little at left tackle, Daniel Faalele at left guard, Jonah Monheim at center, Wyatt Milam at right guard, Chume Doga at right tackle. That is like several galaxies better than the group I just listed, correct?
Especially after watching the Saints game, some of the first things that you mentioned were not good.
Like, if they don't make this trade for him, then their 10th offensive lineman or whatever is one of like they have to decide between Ricky Lee, Jerome, and I don't know if any of those guys are rosterable. So that is how the Jaguars got to trading for a 6th-round pick. Who I know you hate it. Jackson Dart Base 30 on X.com is laughing at you and saying, thank you for taking Daniel Faalele off my hands. Like you had anything to do with it. It ruined your lunch break. I understand. But
yeah, the one thing that I have the one other thing I have about Faalele is that like Cohen kind of said it himself. He's like, yeah, we're looking for depth. He's really big and he's got experience. And like, yeah, that's pretty much it. He's got experience, which is always like a nice thing to look for, even if you don't necessarily perform great in the starts. He has like about 30 career starts under his belt. So it's nice to have experience. It's nice to have depth. And more than anything, like the point about his size stands out because to go back to your point about like Pregnon, like the Jaguars just haven't had a guy with that kind of size and power for a long time. So that's definitely like one of the things that kind of stands out about Pregnon and is most exciting about him. But I also think it's a little bit of a sign of like where the Jaguars want to go and getting these like huge maulers up front. And so even if Faalele doesn't necessarily like stick around for the long haul, I kind of feel like they're maybe looking for a specific type of guard.
How much better is Emmanuel Pregnon right now than Wyatt Milam?
I mean, Pregnon would probably get like a 70-something Madden rating, and Milam would get like a 50-something. I don't know. Like, how do you want me to answer that question? He's a lot better.
So I guess what I'm saying is the Milam pick right now, if now we're going into almost week 1 in the second year, and it looks like the rookie guard is probably a decently better option than starting him. When does he ever actually play? You like, right?
Yeah, no, like the thing going for Milam is like he's young. He was drafted by this regime. There's still hypothetical potential.
He's cheap.
Right. And so like I'm certainly gonna like project him to make the 53-man roster along with Pregnon, obviously, but then Jonah Monheim too as like draft picks from this regime. And then there's like 5 or 6 other names that are pretty locked in too. So then it kind of comes down to like Faalele and Adoga is like the true edge of the roster guys, I feel like.
And again, I don't think they traded a 6th-round pick to cut a guy. You know, like when they traded for Tim Patrick last year, it guaranteed he was on the roster. Liam Cohen was more complimentary of Tim Patrick when they acquired him last year, by the way. Like, he seemed jacked about that one. And,
yeah, he did, dude.
and they had serious issues at wide receiver, too, because, Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't look as good. Travis Hunter kind of needs to figure out what he's doing.
TikTok dancing during his routes.
We hit De'Ami Brown $10 million. And so they were kind of freaking out about receiver, like they're freaking out about offensive line now. This is basically the version of that. And exact quote from Liam yesterday on it was, just continuing to bring depth and guys that have played meaningful reps in this league. That's something you can't have enough of. In Liam translation, that is, he has actually played snaps in an NFL game, unlike the other guys who would be top backups right now. He then goes on to say, we came into camp with 16 and got down to about 9 the other day. That translates to him saying, help. He then says, and when you have some of these things occur and you want to continue, to find guys that have done it, guys that have played in the league at a high level. He's got some big size. I'm looking forward to getting to know him, but the experience is really what matters. That translates to he's pretty big and he has played in an NFL game before. They didn't trade for him to start. You know, they're clearly trading for him because, okay, we need somebody with a pulse who actually knows what it's like to line up in an NFL game. And that's what he is. And
I will say he signed a 1-year, like $1.4 million contract with the Giants. The Jags are going to absorb like $1.2 million. So like from that perspective, like sure, like maybe they overinvested in terms of like the draft capital, but they couldn't have invested less in terms of salary cap.
Like they won't win on a Bleacher Report draft grade that doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But
who cares, dude?
yeah, exactly.
Just because he said Bleacher Report, I can't stand some of the
you know what I'm saying. You know.
Yeah.
Ultimately, who cares is what the responsibility should be. The most of this is they want him to be an 8th or 9th offensive lineman, and I mean, is he a good one? Is he not? I mean, if he's starting, they probably got issues, and it kind of is what it is. So, all right. Back to joint practices after that little trip down the offensive line. Yeah, I got going a little bit just because of the absurdity that it's become. Imagine being Liam Cohen. Like, he's probably like, dude, like once what's it called? Makari, like it got announced the back surgery. It felt like the scene in Dumb and Dumber. He's like, our pets' heads are falling off. Like, dude, everything's already gone to hell. Like he's already hurt.
Yeah, you can see like why the Jaguars wanted to win and like why they came out with some fire in joint practice. Like having like a banged up O-line going into the season is like not very good vibes at all.
So if they had a poor practice, their win for the week would have been having to trade for Daniel Faalele. So
dude, then Cohen would have like gone out, like he would have been like, Trevor, you have 10 plays, go put some points on the board.
Okay, let's go before we get back to joint practice. Do the starters play Friday, Gus?
I don't think so.
Dude,
I think like there's too much BS up along like the offensive line, and especially like. Go ahead.
Was he really mad and he just said it? And then he probably thought about it and was like, I don't mean that at all. And has come to his senses.
I mean, that probably happens like more often than like even you and I would guess because like he's so straightforward and like transparent in his interviews.
What did he say? He said that after practice that, the point of playing starters would be for everybody to play together. And then he's like, well, Parker Washington's also day-to-day. He got injured in Monday's practice, I think. Undisclosed injury, but they expect him back at some point. While we're on the injury talk, LaQuinn Allen out rest of training camp, soft tissue injury. They said they, won't do anything with him until they have to by NFL, protocol, which would suggest that maybe short-term IR is at least, potential possibility. That's a significant, right? So let me say this. It's significant for the Jaguars. I know that every single fantasy, like football, conversation on the topic tried to make it a fantasy thing. I don't think it is at all. Like, I don't think LaQuint Allen's like a fantasy relevant guy. Like, he's on the field a lot on passing downs because he's a really good pass blocker. Like, their role for that is not a pass catching back. It is a passing down back. If he's on the field, they want to throw it to Brian Thomas or Brendan Strange or Parker Washington, so they'll need somebody now to play more of those downs, but I don't think Bashal Tune's going to catch 20 more passes because LaQuint Allen is hurt maybe for a month. I think Emmanuel Abdullah probably makes the roster now and probably actually logs some offensive snaps by the grace of God. But what's your read on that?
No, that's what I was going to say. Like, Amir Abdullah, I've had penciled in for a few weeks now is like, they probably won't carry a fourth running back, but if they did, I would bet on Amir over DJ Dallas or Jamari Taylor, which like maybe is not an accurate prediction, but I think he's like flashed a decent amount during practices. Like, the coaches seem to like him a good bit, and I think he's just like, it's almost like the Faalele argument. Like, he actually has performed at a high level and has a lot of NFL experience, and so like LaQuint Allen is valued so much for his pass protection. For like, I feel like he gets a lot of hype for like kind of like trying to truck guys and run guys over in pass protection and like have pancakes and stuff like that. And that's like certainly great and amazing. But like the other half of it is the fact that he always knows where to go and like IDs guys in pass protection and is in the right spot every time. Like, that's truly what makes him the best pass protecting back in the league. And so I feel like Amir Abdullah, with all that experience, makes sense for him to kind of carry over that into that, again, not the third down receiving back, but just a third down back. And so obviously it'll be split up a little bit between like Abdullah / whoever the RB 3 or 4 is after LaQuint Allen. And then like Rodriguez is probably a better pass blocker than Tune because of his size and experience. But then obviously Tune, like with his explosiveness, like you're still going to cede some of the snaps to him. So it's going to be like a mini rotation within that role if LaQuint doesn't play to start the season.
So like to me, my read of it was this doesn't actually mean anything for Tune and Rodriguez in terms of who's going to play maybe significantly more, who's going to be the lead back. You'd agree with that?
I'd agree with that, but I will say that I think it kind of provides a good opportunity for Tune because I think that like Rodriguez, like we've agreed, like we kind of know what he is, where he's like a bruiser. He's going to be really good hypothetically in like short yardage, goal line, between the tackles, gritty work. And he could probably do like more than that in general and like run more diverse run schemes as opposed to just being like a short yardage dude. But at the same time, like he's like, we know he's like the type of rusher that he is. Bashal, I think like he's like deservedly, not like deservedly, but he's like understandably pigeonholed a little bit as like just like a speedster, like a guy who's like dangerous out in space. But he did show last year he was like better than expected in short yard situations. And there's certainly like a chance, I think, that like with a year in the NFL and a year under in Cohen's scheme and a year understanding blitz pickups more, that he will like surprise in a role as a pass protector. And so like Rodriguez, I think, doesn't necessarily have the capability, or LaQuint Allen for that matter, to like be on the field every single down, and like the defense literally doesn't know what's coming. I like the hypothetical is there for Tune, where like he could be really valuable for the Jaguars in that way, where like he doesn't key them off in any way to tendency.
And like that's like, I think like the high ceiling outcome for Tune.
Totally.
100%. All right. Last couple things on joint practices. I thought Trevor looked mostly good. He had a pick to Nick Scott where he might have been sacked anyways. The ball kind of hung in the air.
Yeah.
He had, to me, 3 bad throws on a day where he probably threw 20 passes. He had the pick. He had a pass where he zigged when he should have zagged. He threw it too hard and, overshot Brendan Strange, and then overshot Brian Thomas Jr. on the last drive when they went 3 and out. Otherwise, I thought Trevor had a strong day. 3 for 3 in the red zone with 3 touchdowns. He, manipulated Devin Lloyd's eyes and found Brendan Strange with the sidearm. He found Nate Borkacher on a really nice play. He found Jacoby Myers lifting the ball over a couple different, defenders' heads to fit it into a window. I thought Nate Borkacher, he caught, I'll be the first to say it. I saw Nate Borkacher go in during the red zone rep, and I thought, that's interesting. Why is Nate Borkacher in right now? They're passing the ball. And then I see him run the route, and I say to Justin Lewis, I wouldn't throw the ball to Nate Worcestershire right now. And then they throw it to him, and he scores, and Justin calls me an idiot. And that's fair. It was a really good play by Nate, and it was a good day for the tight ends. Like Tanner Cozio caught one from Nick Mullins. And Gus, I know I sound like a jerk for saying that. Has he not had a really quiet training camp as a pass catcher? Not just that. They tried to give him the ball a couple days ago in practice, and just right now, I don't know if it's just early or what, the connection isn't there. Like it looked like, trying to think, somebody who's somebody Trevor just had zero chemistry with. That receiver from the Chargers, Tyron Johnson. You remember?
Man, I forgot about him.
Yeah,
what a pull!
Trevor and Borger in training camp have almost looked like that at times, and it looked like that on Monday. Like there were 2 targets to him that I'm not saying it was Borger's fault, but they were just nowhere near being completions. So when I saw him make a nice catch between 2 defenders yesterday, that's a really good flash. Tanner Cozio catches a touchdown, has another play where he bowls over a safety. We talked about the running game looked really good. I thought it was a productive day. They started really fast, tailed off a little bit. But, I mean, what were your thoughts? What were your overall impressions? Because I came away from it thinking, they can probably feel good about things, especially considering they didn't have Parker Washington. They didn't have a couple offensive linemen, so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. And Carolina's defensive line isn't necessarily a top 10 unit in the league, but they do have some dudes. Jalen Phillips being one of them.
Yeah,
he did kind of flatten Borcher on a run play to blow up a run in the backfield. But that touchdown catch was really nice between 2 defenders in the red zone. That was kind of the biggest standout thing to me from watching the offense, was just how good they were in the red zone. Trevor looked really good with his 3 touchdown passes where they were all out of his hands pretty quickly, but still required some post-snap processing and a little bit of creativity, moving Devin Lloyd with his eyes. On the one to Jacoby Myers, he kind of hesitated to get defensive linemen to jump in the air and then threw it. And the ball was actually tipped anyway, but Jacoby had a really good concentration to bring it in cleanly. The 3 for 3 obviously is good, but then even the second team, I thought Nick Mullins had a really good day in general, but including in the red zone. Jamari Taylor had a nice touchdown run to the outside where Pregnon was kind of steamrolling people in front of him. So that was cool to see. But the red zone efficiency especially stood out to me. And Cohen was asked about it after practice. He's like, well, I thought we were pretty good at this at the back half of last year. I think we were top 5 or something. And to their credit, they were very good, especially Cohen said himself, when Trevor was able to use his legs a lot more. And we didn't necessarily see longer scrambles or even design quarterback rushes at the joint practice. But there was still a little bit of that backyard football-esque feel where it's because it's such a small space, it's so hard to really scheme up perfect plays, and a lot of it is just kind of second reaction, make a defender slip and pop wide open for a score. And so that's kind of a lot of what happened last season, I feel and it was a lot of what happened at joint practice. It sounded like the Jags were also really good in the red zone against the Saints. And so red zone performance is typically something that's not very sticky year to year. It's just can be a little bit fluky, I guess. But I think the Jaguars feel pretty confident that as long as they've got Trevor using his legs, both in design run game stuff, but then also scrambling and making plays in the pass game, that they'll be pretty good in that area.
Would you say that during the early Trevor years, I'd say even maybe before he got hot last year, that red zone, specifically in training camp, was kind of his Achilles heel?
I feel Derek Stingley, him by himself, had multiple red zone interceptions of Trevor. So yeah, I would definitely say that obviously throughout Trevor's career, he's been trying to work on being more consistent in general, but I feel the decision makings in the red zone specifically were pretty niche at one point early in his career.
So the fact that he has looked this good in it, this year, says something that he hasn't peaked. He's still getting better.
Yeah, and I will say it's nice having Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington and Brenton Strange and guys he was already throwing end zone fades to Tavon Austin. What are we doing, dude? So he has absolutely improved and has gained more confidence and is just better in general in that area. But he's also in a better situation too.
I thought Brendan Strange had a really good day. He was getting involved. Brian Thomas Jr. I thought had a good day. Brian Thomas Jr. I'd say for the second practice in a row was their most targeted guy with Parker Washington out for the day. I think that very much so is something. Travis Hunter, I've barely seen him on offense in like a week. He played some offense against the Saints in joint practices last week. I think he caught a touchdown against them, but didn't play in the preseason game, has barely been on offense this week, stayed there on defense. Gus, I didn't watch a ton of the defense. From what I did see, I saw Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Dennis Gardeck, and Eric Armstead all pretty much consistently in the backfield. It seemed like Bryce Young hit some big plays that were either, there was one blown coverage. There were a couple that feels like, okay, that probably would have been a sack. And then Tedoroa McMillan, it seemed like gave the Jaguars fits. Jarian had a rep on him where I saw he had a pass breakup. Travis Hunter had a good rep against them where the ball didn't go their way. Like Bryce Young looked at him and then had to move to his next spot in the progression. But otherwise, it seemed like, front seven does good against the run, gets after the quarterback. Back seven kind of struggles to contain McMillan. And then Liam said through 2 joint practices, and mind you, these are 2 joint practices against what? Who's the Panthers' backup quarterback? It's somebody absurd.
They got Kenny Pickett and Kyle Trask.
So the 4 quarterbacks they practiced against in the last 2 joint practices are Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, Kenny Pickett, and Bryce Young, and they haven't recorded an interception. Liam said he's disappointed in that. That's not like good, right? Like that's a little concerning.
It is concerning, especially because usually when the sacks happen, it's not necessarily like a blown dead play immediately. It's like, okay, that would have been a sack, but they're still going to let the quarterback throw the ball and try to get the most out of the rep, basically. So that should give you plenty of opportunities. I didn't even realize that. And I heard Cohen say it, but it didn't really register for me. That's actually pretty wild. And especially because all offseason they've been talking about we're going to be stickier in the back end and that's going to help our pass rush. All right. Let's hope so. But
they have Travis Hunter too. Travis Hunter is being used exclusively at defense, for this specific practice almost.
I didn't see Travis on offense at all, did you?
2 plays is what I saw.
2 plays. So, but I had kind of the same takeaways as you. I saw the 1 blown coverage. Other than that, it felt like much of Carolina's success, at least passing, was just through Ted McMillan. He had a touchdown against Monteric Brown where it felt like Brown broke on the ball well, got a hand pretty close to the ball, but Ted was just bigger, stronger, faster.
He's good, man.
He's really good.
He's really good.
But that's the question for the Jaguars, and that's kind of something we wanted to see going into practice is how are they going to do against not just an opposing number 1 receiver, but pretty big opposing number 1 receiver. They don't really have any scary threats on deck for the season opener against the Browns, but pretty soon after that, they're going to face Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton, and obviously Jalen Waddle isn't big, but he's a very explosive, good receiver. Huh?
Denzel Boston?
I mean, he's been flashing a lot, so.
He's a big receiver.
Yeah, he is. So the Jaguars are going to get tested right away in the season of whether they can play stickier coverage, but especially whether they can play stickier coverage against bigger guys. Because even if they do play stickier coverage against bigger guys, maybe the same thing happens that we saw in the Tet versus Monteric Brown rep. I think that size is a little bit of a concern almost across the roster. Because we talk about the offensive line trying to get a little bit bigger. Pregnon is a sight we haven't seen in a while. Faalele is in that same vein. They're trying to do more 2 and 3 tight end personnel packages, et cetera, et cetera. And so, they obviously have a lot of size in their defensive line. They're fine at the linebacker and safety positions. And so I'm not saying it's a small defense in general, but their cornerbacks aren't big.
Gus, we got something live as we're recording.
We're
about to wrap up. Ian Rappaport has just reported the Jaguars are getting healthy on the offensive line. Cole Van Lannon is coming off the PUP today, has passed his physical, injured his knee in week 18. Cole Van Lannon is going to start in week 1, probably, right?
Hey, I thought you were gonna say the Jaguars got good injury luck. Makari is expected to return for week 1 after week 2, which wouldn't make any sense, but Cole Van Lannon being
that's
expected to come, that's a win. That's another win. Add it to the tally.
Like I said, I had been thinking, at least recently that, he's maybe going to be back sooner. He has to play at right tackle, right? Because why else would they be putting Anton at left tackle? Like, right?
Yeah, and he also
does any of this matter? Does anything matter?
He got paid tackle money for sure, and I guess hypothetically it's more so right tackle money than left tackle money.
Oh, 100%. So
yeah, he's being it will be interesting to see. Like, do you expect the Jaguars to like do a little bit of still play Anton on the right a little bit, like mix him around, or are you pretty much expecting Anton left?
I don't know what the hell they're doing, bro. I don't know. I have no idea, Gus. I am. The fight is out of me, Gus. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I didn't think for a second that a potential line would have Ezra Cleveland at right guard, Jonah Monheim taking reps. I don't know what the hell's going on. We'll see. That's what I got for you. We'll see.
We'll see, indeed.
Yeah, well, that's how exasperated I am with the moving pieces. Imagine, like they're really invested in it. I'm just observing it. Like they are like, our jobs depend on this. That's not to say, obviously, you know what I mean. I mean, just as coaches in general. All right.
Yeah.
Gustafer, do we have anything left? I feel like we hashed it up pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think we're good. I'm sure we'll have plenty of new developments to talk about next week.
Next time we talk, probably after we see a couple of joint practices against Tampa. I am ready to hate on Baker Mayfield for 2 days straight.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am.
All right, here's a question to end it. Like, Emmanuel Pregnon is like the Jaguar that like got a ton of hype over the past week. Like, is there a single young Jaguar trying to make a roster spot who you could see being like the talk of the town this time next week?
Dude, and that's the thing. It's like I feel like the 53 is like pretty easy to make. Like,
yeah, dude. I was looking at it yesterday. I was like, check.
I think like the sleeper is like what, like Tavi at linebacker, and he's pretty much now making the roster because Parker Hughes got hurt. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, dude. Like, I don't think Josh Cameron and CJ Williams, for example, have any chances of getting cut. They both look really good against the Panthers. I could see them having really good, days against Tampa Bay, and then like their stock being up. It's been interesting with Parker out. They've had Austin Trammell, as the third receiver in 11 personnel. I know some people were thinking, okay, it's like Madden, the next highest overall is going to go in. No, CJ Williams and Josh Cameron, are playing more the the Z and the X role as opposed to the slot. So definitely gives the Jaguars, I think, some options moving forward. But I don't know, dude. I think Linebacker is a sleeper right now.
I think linebacker is a good shout between Tavi. Amari Burney actually had a pretty solid game against the Saints in the first preseason week.
You're sick.
I'm just saying. And then like I feel like there's like a decent amount of like local fans for Ventrell Miller. So if he happens to have a really good game or a really good joint practice, it could be like, oh, did he lock in like the starting spot at linebacker across from Foye? So I feel like linebacker is a nice little just give the listener something to look forward to.
Whose voice was that? You have like half a second. It's like you're trying to do an impersonation and then you bailed on it.
I don't know.
We've got into the Amari Burney part of the podcast. We've got
the whole podcast has been delirious.
Yeah, we've gone off the rails. Gus, thank you for joining me as always, my friend. Go on and be merry. I hope everybody has a good time at the game on Friday. No idea what the exact it's going to be a different setting, that's for sure, with everything going on at the stadium. But excited to see it. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Please, before you guys go, please make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at the Prowler Podcast. Give us likes, review, whatever you got to do on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find us on social media, Twitter. Find Gus at Big Cat Country. Find me at Jaguars on SI. This was the Prowler Podcast, and we'll be back next time.